Hope everyone's having a good Tuesday morning. We still have some sunshine. I know some of you are loathing that for the fall season. For me, I will take it as long as I can, and then we can move into fall. Um, but I do love fall. Pumpkins, pumpkin patches, the leaves, all those kind of things. Okay, I think we're pretty settled here, so we'll go ahead and start moving. We do have a lot of new things to kind of share with everyone and start off this academic year. First, if you haven't met me yet, my name is Carly Curley. Use she, her pronouns. I'm the Assistant Director for Need-Based Programs and primarily the person that you work with a lot on the interim reporting process. Let's see, visual description. I have a green Wasack background, green hair, red lips, fair skin, and a white top on today. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about some updates and reminders, a little bit highlighting some edits that you may want to, be aware of, or just know a little bit more about the process. WASFA corrections being live and things that we may still need from you in order to get going with WASFA corrections, a walkthrough of the interim report process, and then of course at the end we will be doing some Q&A. So please feel free to use the Q&A feature throughout the presentation. We will likely take all questions at the end, but would love to hear from you any types of questions that you have, and we have plenty of time built in to make sure that we're addressing those, and look forward to seeing what you have to ask. First, just want to give big cheers to a new academic year. I know you all are in the heart of that right now. Some of our semester schools may have been in it for a while, and I know some of our quarter schools you may have started or you will be starting. So just wanted to start it off with a real positive vibes to you all as you begin the busy season here with students, and yeah, just thinking of you all as you go through this. So typical of me, I kind of want to know, what do you want to learn about? So if you can access the QR code, let us know what you'd like to learn today in a few words. Is there anything that's kind of making you curious, or are there things that you don't know about the interim report that you'd like me to touch on? Is there something about, edits that you are kind of wondering about, or things like that? I'd love to hear from you and see if there's anything that I can make sure to talk about. So I'll give us just a couple minutes here to see if you have any suggestions or anything you want to know about. In the meantime, if there is nothing, we will keep on walking forward and make sure that we are we're touching on all things interim reporting, and like I said, plenty of time for Q&A in terms of any questions you have in the future. This is where I wish we had a little bit of chat. Any changes coming our way? All right, great. Any tips or tricks to get through more easily, less stress? Yes, we love that. We want the least amount of stress possible. One of my tips is start early, for sure. I know it's hard because you're balancing so many things, especially in this fall season. But I think one of the ways that it gets the most stressful for people is when they're trying to, complete it the day it's due or the day before it's due, and then maybe there's some like rejected overrides you have to do. 6-year students in CBS. Okay. Yes, appreciate that. We are going to touch on that today. Q1 receiving. I'm not sure I know what it means, but definitely feel free to clarify in QA the loose receiving. I'm not sure. But yes, we'll talk about the 6-year eligibility timeframe for sure. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, y'all. Well, thank you. I appreciate your feedback, and we'll make sure to talk about that. So speaking right away, instant gratification for you. There has been some CBS eligibility checker updates. So 2 huge things happen in this legislative session. The first is that students can receive a high school equivalency and qualify for college bound. And so what you're going to see when you access the checkers, you're going to see a new menu here that says high school GED grad year. And this is going to be applicable for students this academic year moving forward. And you're going to see a new column that says eligibility open, and this is referring to the 6-year time frame. And so let's talk a little bit about that 6-year time frame. We recently were identified an issue where the checker was actually calculating 6 years plus one term. And so that actually was fixed this week. And so really what it is say a student enrolls fall 2021, okay? They've enrolled fall 2021. They're going to have 6 years from that enrollment date to receive college bound. And so that means if they went full time, they probably utilize all 18 QER of their college bound fund. However, they may not, they may go part time some of the time and full time some of the time, and they may exhaust the time frame before they exhaust their QERs. So that's a big thing to keep in mind. One thing that might be confusing in terms of 6 year time limit is, okay, so they have 1 year within high school or GED graduation or GED receipt to enroll, and the GED or high school equivalency, approved high school equivalency, does have to be obtained by their 21st birthday. So the big thing to know is in Seesaw, it's going to base the calculation based off their first reported term of enrollment. And so it's going to look at when they were first awarded aid. Is that within 1 year of graduation or GED receipt? Okay, great. They meet the enrolled by deadline. Now it's going to calculate 6 years from that point. So in our example here, you have someone that graduated in 2021. They started spring 2021. They started fall 2021. They would have 6 years from that date plus a summer term to be able to receive the aid. So what would that get us? 21. This is how I do it. I literally take it on my hands and count it out. So we have the academic year 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27. So they'd have through summer term 26, 27 to receive college bound funds. And so that's where you're going to see a yes or no in the eligibility open header. I think we might have a question, and we'll make sure to address that definitely when we get to that point. But I hope that's a little bit helpful in terms of explaining how that calculation is working, what it's looking at in Seesaw, and why it would say yes or no. For the GED portion, there are updates to the checker overrides where if you receive a GED transcript, that has been the way that we've defined the necessary requirement to collect from students. So the reason why is the GED transcript actually has, the state the GED was completed in, which must be Washington. It will give you the date. It gives all pertinent information that will allow you to override the checker for a GED student. So that's a new piece as well. So big changes for CBS as far as that is concerned, and a couple new things to get used to when you're kind of reviewing your students here. So you may have noticed if you logged into the portal yesterday that there is a new edit screen. So part of our ongoing Seesaw upgrade project, we are continuing to work on certain pieces of Seesaw and update the screen. And so you'll see it kind of looks like this, kind of a new little style that we've been developing. And I wanted to talk about a couple different features that have been added to the new edit screen. So first you have an option to sort different ways. So you can group it by program, and that means like how you traditionally have seen edits, by CBS, WCG, general edits, or you can do it by edit type. So say you're a person that wants to tackle them by overridable first. You can view all of those, or the non-overridable edits. So you have a couple different options in terms of sorting. And you see the search bar here that you can search for a certain edit type if you're looking for it. There's just some good sorting options for you and finding options now available for you. So something that's coming soon, this is something that we're going to be implementing very soon, and I anticipate that we will have it before we begin the fall interim. So that's kind of why I wanted to introduce this to you. There'll be some new information available to you. So any edits that have been rejected by our team will show under the edit type. So right next to the edit itself, it'll say how many rejected overrides there are. When you go to click on that actual edit, what you're going to see there is rejected overrides will have this triangle exclamation symbol. So very similar to how you see edits in the student detail record, or, you're familiar probably with that symbol before. And you can sort by rejected overrides first. So you can choose to select, okay, I'm going to deal with the rejected overrides, see what happened, why they weren't approved. And that could be a way that you tackle your list. When you select the override again, so say you were going to override this student, what you're going to be able to see is why the edit has been rejected. So you can look and see, oh, okay, this is a really long explanation by me. Typically, I'm a lot shorter, but for this particular one, I gave more information. So you can see here, and this part of the reason why we're doing this too is that we used to get overrides over and over again. And I think that was frustrating for schools too, because we would keep coming back and saying, no, that's rejected for this reason. And so we've tried to develop some ways for you all to be able to see the reject reason, and then maybe rethink like how you want to approach that edit in the future. So the edit message will be there. You can put in the new override. You'll still see the pre-populated menu of override options pop up when you start to type in that override box. So you can always use the pre-populated overrides if that works. And yeah, so those are coming very soon, and hopefully right before the interim report. We're also going to be debuting a new account status screen, also going to just be a little bit easier format for you. Some of you might not be familiar, and we may even change the name of this menu. I think we will be in the future, because account status kind of sounds, what is that? What am I checking for? Essentially what this does is it shows you payment history. And so this is just giving you transaction history, payment details, and all of that good information. This can be a really great place for your finance or business office to have access to, in terms of records of payment for your institution. So this will be coming soon to Seesaw. Just a reminder about the updated upload screen, looks like this, and is incremental file format only. We'll talk about incremental file one more time today. I know we've talked about that a lot this past year, but definitely want to just kind of do some reminders about that file format. So this is what the new upload screen that we had put out in Seesaw last year. So you're probably familiar with it, but just wanted to mention it. So speaking of incremental file, what is it? So what does that even mean? What are you trying to tell us about this file upload? So essentially, this is a file upload option that allows you to upload partial student data instead of one full file that every time deletes all of the information and redoes the information through that file. So when we did the full file, you put your full file every single interim or whenever you did your upload, and it would delete everything that was in Seesaw. So you'd have to readdress all the edits that you've already addressed if they were the same students. And so this is a really positive thing about the incremental file, is that you can only put changed student data, upload that to Seesaw, and then you only have to address edits for those new students as changed students. And then since we're typically in this space, maybe not for summer one schools, but for other schools, you also use this as your initial upload of all of your student data. So you can put all your students in the incremental file and upload them when you first do your first upload. And so that's kind of what the incremental file does. Some highlights to know is that there's just one extra column, and it's the is delete column. And so this is really important to note, because it's not going to delete students by just simply omitting them from your file. You have to indicate if you want a student deleted by using the Y in that column. And so that's really, really important to note. If you want someone deleted, you definitely need to indicate that on the file and include the student in the file after your initial full student file load. And likewise, not even just with deleting, it's not going to affect students that are not on the file. So it's not going to change anything for students that are not included in your future files. And so this is similar to the unit record report for those who are familiar with it. And I know we've been using this for quite a few terms now. And I know that schools are still developing or have developed a way to do this. And so we thank you for working on that. And again, let us know if you have any questions about file type and the incremental file in general. This is just our time to say 0 words equal need met. They don't mean that the student didn't get an award. So it's really important to only use $0 in the way if they've had need met on your file. So leave it blank if the student doesn't meet the eligibility requirements for a certain fund. Don't put a 0. Wanted to highlight the guidance that we sent out in August about Summer One payments. And so just to point out a couple different things, essentially we said, if students were awarded in the Summer One term in Seesaw and had funds requested and paid prior to the checker updates that occurred on August 12th, they can keep the CBS funds. So the 2 important things to note here is that they were reported in Seesaw before August 12th, and they also had funds requested and paid. And so any students that are not in that category will need to have CBS funds deleted for all terms, and especially for future terms after Summer One if they do qualify for this guidance. So there's going to be an edit. So student not eligible for CS, we made that overridable. And there is some pre-populated override that says per 825 WASAC guidance that you can use. They will get the CBS is not okay to pay edit, but since you have already requested funds for the student, you don't have to worry about that. And the interim report can be submitted with this edit. So I know it gets a little confusing because during the final interim period, schools do have to resolve the CBS is not okay to pay edit, but for fall, winter, and spring terms, you do not. You can just submit your edit. And the reason why, and we'll talk about this here shortly, is because there's going to be students that schools need to verify their information. And so you might be mid-process collecting their transcript or their high school or GED transcript. And so you aren't able to resolve that right away for a given interim period. It's also a good way to kind of keep track of the students you're trying to do this for that are in the CBS is not okay to pay edit. It's a good reminder of, oh yeah, this is the one we're working on. Collecting their transcript might be a way to remind students to submit that to you. So how Seesaw works in terms of its matching is you upload your file into Seesaw, and this is how we get family income information to match and information to match in general in the Seesaw area. So they're going to upload your file. It's going to contain award amounts. It's going to contain transaction numbers for their financial aid application. The exception being for Washington College Grant Connect students that don't require an application. It matches the information provided through the file upload to the student's actual FAFSA or WASFA transaction number. So if the information doesn't match, there'll be an edit to resolve. So I think many of you have been in this position where you're like, oh no, it says no WASFA or FAFSA on file. I'm not sure what's going on. And we'll talk about that here in a little while, how some common things that you could do to troubleshoot that issue specifically. This is a lot of information on a screen. We do have this information in the manual, but just kind of a reminder of how data hierarchy is in Seesaw and the information that is pulled off of a financial aid application in terms of what is used to determine family income. So we definitely get some questions about that often. So I'm getting this income, but I don't understand how you all have this different income. And so one of the places you can look is this data hierarchy that will give you a little bit of an idea of what fields were used. This information comes and matches, our federal guidelines as well. So, we're matching the hierarchy from there. And we've done that, and we've put these rules into Seesaw. So we do get questions, and often this has been my best friend. I don't know if a lot of you have been accessing the SAI and Pell Grant eligibility guide, but this is an excellent tool. A lot of times we'll get questions about household size and how was that determined. Appendix C is a really helpful tool to see exactly how we determine family size because we modeled it after this document. And there's certain hierarchy as far as like what fields are used and in what order they're used. So just wanted to point out this tool because it's really excellent, helps you kind of see maybe what the data fields are being used to determine. And of course, always reach out if you have questions. I'm happy to look into it for you. Typically, we find it's just, oh, I was using that field, not that field, when there's differences. Okay, a little bit more about edits. So this is a popular one and one we always like to kind of highlight. And it's the student is okay to award, not okay to pay, and hasn't been awarded CBS edit. So first of all, why does this edit occur? It occurs because there's verify in either the high school GED grad year, the high school 2.0 GPA, both, one or both. And so there's information that needs to be verified in order for the student to receive funds. And so this is a really important one where you need to reach out to students to make sure you collect a transcript from them, unless you already have it on file, and in which that's the case. We'll talk about that here in a moment. You can just update the checker. So easy schmeezy. Hopefully you don't have to collect it, but we know there's certain situations where schools don't collect high school or GED transcripts, and so they'll have to reach out to students. And the reason why this happens is because we do have a data share agreement through OSPI. And so a lot of information comes for our public school students through OSPI. Very little information comes through about GED through this agreement, but there's lots of other situations. It could be that a public school didn't report the student's information to OSPI, and so we didn't get their information, or they're in a private school or they've been homeschooled. So there's many different situations in why they would show up as verified, and so this is kind of the edit that comes up when that's the case. So you have a couple different ways to resolve this issue. So if a high school or GED transcript has been received, you just need to override the CBS eligibility checker. And you want to make sure to do both the high school and GED grad year as well as the GPA overrides when you do have a transcript. And so in terms of the GED transcript, we've already assumed that the student is meeting the 2.0 requirement. But if you have a high school transcript, you'll want to make sure to update the GPA value based on that transcript too. It does have to be a final transcript. It doesn't have to be official. So it can be unofficial or official high school transcript, but it does have to be the final transcript. So you'll want to make sure that you're not updating the checker well before the student has graduated, when you don't have a final transcript yet. So the override's just going to look a little different on the high school GED grad year side this year. You're going to see that there's a value to select. That's the academic year the student graduated. If the student was a GED graduate, you indicate yes or no, and then you definitely want to put in the reason box just information in terms of like what you collected and information as far as that goes. So if you have the info, just update the checker by doing an override, and that will update the checker so the student is okay to pay, and that will get rid of the edit. If you don't have, wanted to talk about in a moment just kind of what the GED transcript looks like. So this is the website that students can order the transcripts from. And there's a testing jurisdiction piece that you can see whether they earned it in Washington. That is required in this case, and then the pass date that will help you to override the academic year portion, and so can indicate when they when they actually receive the GED. So kind of just wanted to provide you an example of what that looks like, an official GED transcript. Okay, so you may be wondering, Carly, hey, I haven't been able to collect that. We literally just started school. I don't have this information. I can't override the checker. What do I do next? So this is a common question. What you don't want to do is override. You don't want to override the edit and say, I'm collecting a transcript, because then we'll reject that information. But what you do want to do is you want to award CBS in Seesaw and your system. So I know for many schools, they can do this in an offered status type thing. And I'm not sure system capability over all of our institutions, but I'm hoping there's some option where you can offer it in offered status and maybe put a requirement to submit the transcript. But the main thing is you need to award it in Seesaw. So you'll want to make sure to do that in this case. And then what will happen is you'll get that CBS is not okay to pay edit. So you resolve this edit, but you get the CVS is not okay to pay. And just a reminder, you can submit your interim report with that edit. It's the only edit that you can have outstanding to still submit your interim report and request funds, of course, except for the students that are on that have that remaining edit. And so, like I said, it's a good way to kind of track your students that have been awarded Seesaw, or sorry, CVS at offered or awarded in Seesaw, but still have to submit that extra information to be able to pay. So this is kind of the edit we were talking about. Student does not have a FAFSA or WASFA on file. And so this edit appears when Seesaw cannot find a match to a financial aid application. Typically, this is just a data entry error or something where the ID is not matching, and so it cannot find the student's information. It could be a hierarchy information problem too. So if you're have a WASFA filer, and maybe you've awarded them on their WASFA ID in Seesaw, but they actually have put an SSN or ITIN on their application, that can usually be the problem why it doesn't find their WASFA, because there's a certain hierarchy. And we'll talk specifically about the WASFA here. So student, also maybe the student hasn't listed your school on their financial aid application for some reason, or maybe the transaction number reported is not right, or maybe it, you reported a WASFA number for a FAFSA filer or vice versa. And so, WASFA transactions start with 50s, whereas, FAFSA starts with 1, 2, 3 for their transaction numbers. So that can happen sometimes. So here's some just good troubleshooting tips when you're kind of navigating this edit. Another one that's kind of confusing sometimes is student has been awarded WCG and WGA in the same academic year. And so WGA stands for WA Grant for Apprenticeship, and it is possible that students are attending two programs, at the same time. And so usually what that requires is just a little bit of extra digging on our behalf. And so you have a couple different override options. The first is WASAC to verify that the student is not over awarded between WCG and WGA. And then what you might anticipate is that either an email from our apprenticeship team or myself will come through to you with some additional questions just to double check that the student is in fact eligible for both funds or not, and we'll work through what to do. Or you've already worked with us and you know that you've paid on adjusted cost of attendance as the institution, and you can use that override as well. So these are just helpful as you kind of navigate that. Y'all, WASFA corrections are available. We're so excited. Our team is as excited, I think, as you to have this happening. And we did send out an email with instructions of the next setup piece for this. It is a different way of doing corrections, but as many of you know, we've had some issues for, probably a year and a half of portal to our application provider data exchange. Which caused a lot of delays in terms of being able to do corrections. So we're very excited about this tool. It will require you to kind of have a login with our provider, which is Regent. But we're hoping that this will be a much faster and less frustrating process for everyone. So if you did not receive the email with instructions and you are a person that manages the WASFA side of your school, please let us know. We are happy to resend that to you, connect with you, provide you information. We're very excited. So what does our team need from you? We included a form. There's a Microsoft form that's in the email. And thank you, first of all, thank you so much to people. I think we had so many people within the first couple of days let us know their information. So just huge shout out if you're one of them. Thank you so much for doing that. It just requires that you put all the names of the staff that need to access the system, their email addresses, and then IP addresses or range. And then that will allow us to set you up in Regent's system. And then we're going to give you some more information. So don't worry, we're going to train you. We're going to allow you to understand the process. And of course, our team is here whenever you have questions to be able to help. And so you'll use this tool called Advisor Assist. And Corrections will be available for download in the WASAC portal basically the following business day, depending on the time frame in which you do it. So it should be a very fast time frame once you do the corrections now. And I want to kind of show on the next screen what that looks like. So this is kind of what the advisor assist screen looks like, and very different system. I recognize very different looking, but what I have really appreciated about having this tool now, even on our side, is being able to see what the student sees. So essentially, you will be logging into their portal, their WASFA portal, to correct their application. And so this has been really helpful as we work with students to troubleshoot potential, issues that they're having, tech issues that they're having, or even just to see what the student is doing, especially when you're working with them over the phone. We found this to be super helpful. So very excited about this, hoping it's going to be a great tool for everyone and can be really helpful in troubleshooting with students. But more importantly, it's going to work. We've tested it a lot. And again, I just want to say a huge thank you to those who are pilot schools to test this process for us. We are so appreciative of you and are thrilled that we're in this place now. So if you haven't got your information to us, please complete the form as soon as you're able to. And like I said, if you have questions, let us know. So back to correcting multiple IDs in the system. So this is specific to WASFA typically. And this is when, for example, we talked about where it says there's no FAFSA or WASFA on file, and the student, maybe is awarded under their WASFA ID, but they've since added an ITIN to their application, this year. And so this can be kind of a frustrating process. And so there's some ways that you can go about it in terms of to correct that information, and what to look for. So we'll talk about those steps. First, before we do that, just understanding the hierarchy of awarding in Seesaw. So it's going to be if the student has an SSN listed, that's what they need to be awarded on. If they have an I-10 listed, they need to be awarded on that. And then lastly, the WASFA ID. So one thing that you can do when you have that edit of no WASFA on file is you can take a look at the WASFA application and check what ID you've awarded them on and what ID or IDs they have on their application. That can be like a quick troubleshoot where you can edit the ID. So if a student has multiple SSN or ITIN numbers, got to confirm which one's correct with the student. So if they've been, one application 1 year, they've done one SSN and then they change the SSN and you're just not quite sure, that is conflicting information you'll have to resolve with the student. If it's just that the student added an SSN for the first time, you can feel free just to use the application and rely on that number on the application. It's more if you have conflicting information with a specific ID number that you'll have to work with them on. This does happen a lot where students will complete a whole new WASFA account. So they might have multiple 980 or 981 numbers that are WASFA IDs. If that's the case, you will probably want to award them on their latest WASFA account ID. And hopefully they'll continue to use that for the rest of time. We know that that's a point of frustration sometimes. So here's just talking about the order of which to award the student in Seesaw, and kind of talking about the hierarchy in which to do so. So once you have the correct ID determined, students awarded in Seesaw on the correct ID, any awards are deleted from the incorrect ID, which usually isn't a problem here in fall because usually you haven't requested funds. If you have requested funds on an ID, we'll have to do some things to kind of fix and merge the student. So if a duplicate ID still remains after you've edited the ID number, you want to just let us know through a secure message the student's name and the correct ID that they should be awarded on, and then that way we can perform a merge of the student records. Since you do have the ability to edit the WASFA now, sometimes there's the cases where a student needs to add an SSN because maybe the school has a record and you found conflicting information between admissions records and their application, and you need to add an I-10 or something to their application. That is now something you can do again through corrections. So that is another thing that will be, I think, a little bit easier for you all. All right, we're getting to interim report walkthrough time. again, thank you so much for just your attention. And I know we have about 25 minutes left, so I think still have plenty of time to go through any questions. My colleague, Leslie Gonzalez, who's in the background, is going to help us with that. So thank you so much, Leslie, when that time comes. Also have Gabrielle Matul-Wurst here helping in the background. So just wanted to send a shout out to you both and say that I appreciate you. So the interim process, this is kind of just a time what you're going to load your file, all the questions, and review the interim report, and then submit. So very simple, everyone. Very, very easy. We'll talk about how each of these processes. I'm also realizing I have a disco ball planter, so if I look very illuminated, that is what's going on right now with the sunshine. Okay, so step one, upload your file. So you're going to select which academic year, very important when we're kind of running in a multi-academic year system, to select the correct academic year. That won't be a problem right now. And it will have your school name here where it looks blank, and you'll hit continue. So you're going to select your file, and you can see here if you're looking for the template for some reason for the file, you can see the CSV template here. You're going to choose your file and hit continue once you've selected your file. So the system's going to do an error check just in case there's some wrong formatting or something that shouldn't be in the file. And so, for example, here we see, oh, the school code was found multiple times in the same file. Duplicate codes are not allowed. So it'll tell you kind of the issues that are happening. If it's specific to a row and column in your file, it will actually say what the row and the column is. In this case, it looks like there's just multiple issues with a school code that needed to be fixed. And so if that's the case, you can just click on start over. You can download the errors if that will help you fix your file and then start the process again. If not, then you're going to go to this last tab, which says review file contents. And you just want to take a peek. So some things I would look at. You see where it says 0 records marked for deletion. That might be a good thing to look at. So as you're doing your change only files, if you anticipated deleting a bunch of students, then you would see how many records were listed there. That's a good place to check. Looking at the total money amounts and the dollar amounts that are listed there, does that look what you're anticipating? You know, if it was like $5 for WCG, there might be something wrong with your file. So it's a good idea just to do a quick review and make sure that everything is looking as you anticipate it to before you hit the confirm button. So there's going to be a status bar as your file's uploading, let you know kind of where you're at. And once the file is uploaded, click on review edits to go to the edits page. So now you're going to resolve some edits. You can either click on review edits tab, or you can just go up to the menu and click on the edits menu if you need to. So there's always the seesaw menu and you can just go down to edits to access that at any time as well. All right, so our new little edit page here that we're so excited about. So when you access the edit tab, a list of all the edits that you have to complete will be there. You can see in this example, there's 854 edits to address, but only 781 of informational. And informational just means that you don't have to address them to submit your interim report. However, you may want to look at them because they might be good information, such as students that have a lower Washington College grant amount than they'd be eligible for. And there, of course, could be various reasons why that occurs, but that's an informational edit that I think is helpful. So you don't have to do those. Click on edit to view the students that are associated with that edit. So like we talked about earlier, you can group it by edit type or by program type, and you can see here this is sorted by program type. So depending on how your flow is and how you do the report, choose whatever is easiest for you to do. Something that's great is that now, I used to say, organize them by alphabetical name. Well, it's automatically going to be organized in alpha order for you now. And so you can kind of see what's nice about that is you might have a student that has multiple terms in the same edit, and you can kind of work on them and, do a 2-for-1 or, get that edit done in a lot less than it appears to be. So maybe it says 265, but really you only have, 150 students to review, something like that. And an important thing to know, even though this is blanked out in the screen, there will be a blue student name, and you can right click on there to go to the student detail record. I like right clicking and opening in a new tab just so I can keep the edit page open. That's something that's been helpful for me. You can just straight click on the link and it will go to the student detail record, but I don't know. In my way, I like to do it, open it in a new tab, keep the edit page open, and I don't know, that's just one of the ways I do it and sort. You can fix the override directly in the screen. So you can see here that there's different options. There's save, there's override, there's delete awards for an overrideable edit. So if you know what the fix is for a student, if you're like, oh, I just need to delete the CBS award, you could just blank it out and hit save, and that'll take care of the edit. Or if you know you have an override for a given student, you can perform that on this page. However, we do think it's a good idea to look at the student detail information just to make sure. It's always good to check that. So something to note. So when you go into the student detail record, you're going to notice a couple things. So edits are going to be either term specific or academic year specific. And we note those specific edits by that triangle with the exclamation. So kind of similar to the rejected overrides, you'll see the triangle and the exclamation to identify that there's an edit for that student. So in this case, this is term-based edit for the student where they're not eligible. Yes. And so that's something that's going to have to be resolved. And so you can look at some information on here to figure out what the student needs to do. You can edit the student. And if you're ever curious about the triangle or like the edit more itself, you can click on the triangle icon to see what the edit is. And then it will show any rejected override information there too. So there's a couple different places you can view that information. So if you're going to edit the student, maybe you just needed to delete CBS in this case, you can do that from the student detail record as well. The edit icon is highlighted in green there. It's like the little pencil in the box. That's where you would click on to edit anything for the student. This is also what you would click on to edit any ID information. So if you needed to change a WASFA ID, you can use that edit box to do that. In this case, I'm just showing, editing the actual award information. So you make the changes and then you're going to click update student to save. Once saved, you want to refresh the student detail page and the edit should be gone if resolved. If the edit wasn't fully resolved, there's more to fix. So something to know. But yeah, typically you might have to refresh the page to make sure that everything goes through. So don't worry if you already fixed it and you go back and it doesn't show right away that it's been resolved. That might be a tip for you as you're working on those. All right, that's your edits. And as we all know, or anybody that's done the interim, we know that's a huge portion of the interim reporting. And we also know for fall interim, this is also my plug to say start early because there's going to just be a lot more. You're dealing with all of your students, you're working on all of the edits. As we go throughout the year, you should find that you have less edits to resolve on each interim report, especially if you found a way to work with your system for change only files. So that's my hope for you, so that you have less work to do in the future, but it's something to anticipate for fall is that you will have more edits to resolve. And so our next step after we've completed all the edits is to request funds. And so we just suggest selecting, choose all students by program. And so, for example, for this interim reporting period, you'd be doing any summer 1 and fall funds, requesting all of those funds. And like I said, if you have that CBS is not okay to pay edit, you may see some little red edits that are still populated. That's okay. You can still request funds with edits in place. So don't worry about that piece of it. And you'll want to request all those fall and summer 1 funds. Once you've selected those, you're going to click on I agree, request funds, make sure you're doing all of that. And I noticed that we still have bridge here, and just a reminder that there's no bridge grant this year. But you'll click on I agree, request funds, and then you'll get a confirmation, hey, the request has been submitted here. So what we do on a daily basis is we check for payments that have been requested at WASAC, and we make sure to approve those on a daily basis. And so as far as time frame, that is something we do every day during the working week. finally, you're going to get to your interim report and you're going to be very excited because you know you've done all of the edits, you've requested all the funds, you've done all the things. And now this is where the blue, if you've done all your edits, you'll see a blue submit interim report button. If for some reason it's grayed out or it's not present, there's still some work to do. So you'll just have to go back to your edits page and see, oh, did I miss something? Is that why I'm not able to submit my interim report? We like to just recommend that one, you review all the information on the interim report page. Is is the funding looking correct? And then on the left hand side, you'll see some menus. So there'll be awards and payments, total eligible, receivables. So in those menus, you'll be able to see a count of students that received WCG. And these are things that we actually check when we're finalizing your report, just to make sure that it makes sense. If you had 1,400 students that got WCG last year, because it'll compare academic years, 3 academic years, I believe. If for some reason you have 1,400 last year, now you only have 200 students, we would say, ooh, is that right? Is that okay? So just some checks to make sure that your reporting is looking correct, and you don't have to worry about that. So once you submit it, a confirmation email will be sent to both you and our team. And then what we will do, and typically we do this actually throughout the interim reporting period, we will be reviewing your overrides. And if we have to reject some, we'll submit them. So don't be surprised if you're working in edits and you see some rejected overrides as you're still working on edits, because we're usually in your report trying to review overrides as much as possible so it doesn't become overwhelming on the due date. But we'll review any of the overrides and we will contact you once you've submitted your report if there are any things that you need to fix. We'll typically tell you, this is the override, here's the issue, this is what needs to be resolved. You can always reply back with any questions you have. Happy to work through those with you. So my last little reminders: request payments before submitting your report for summer 1 and fall terms. Pay close attention to the due date, start early. So our due date for this report is going to be November 10th, and that's the day, I believe, before Veterans Day holiday. So just make sure you are early and on time. And then ask questions. If you don't understand something, reach out. We're here for you. Myself or a member of my team will make sure to get back to you and help address anything. We're also happy to hop on, a Teams call or the phone to help work through some issues as well. All right, you all, thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm going to see if we have any questions, Leslie, and then we can kind of address those. Please continue to feel free to put some in the Q&A, and we can go from there.
Yeah, so it looks like so far there's just one question. The question is about the 2-year transfer for okay to award or okay to pay. If we're a private 4-year and the student is transferring in 0 credits, so not really a transfer student, and we can't find any data on COD or NSLDS for the student, does that mean that they're not eligible for CBS at our private 4-year?
Yeah. So they would have to be. So if I understand correctly, it sounds like they're being designated as a transfer student, but they're not getting any credits transferred. I think it would depend on if they are a transfer student for admissions. A first year. Okay, I see what you're saying, Ashley. Okay, yeah, no, if they're not a transfer student, then they would not be eligible if they're below a 2.0 GPA. That is the one. So if you all are familiar, kind of what the policy we're talking about here is, when it changed that students did not, they weren't required to have a GPA requirement for CBS if they were either at a 2-year school or a transfer student. The only time the 2.0 comes into play has to do with a direct admit into a 4-year university. So if a student, so the GPA requirement is a high school GPA requirement, not a transfer GPA requirement. So if they're a first year student, it would have to do with their high school transcript, not their college transcript. It's just the way that the law is written is that they don't have that requirement if they are, at a 2-year school or a transfer student into a 4-year school. So yeah. Okay, great. So follow-up question is, sorry, Leslie, I'll take this. I can see him here. So do they attend one term, and if they have a 2.0, then they can get CPS? So are you saying, yeah, so if the student transferred, say the student transferred from a 2-year school with a GPA. They transferred into your school and they have below. So the 2.0, I think the main thing to say here is the 2.0 only has to do with their high school transcript. It doesn't have to do with their transfer transcript from a school. What it has to do with is, are they a transfer student as far as an admissions requirement as a transfer student? Then at a 4-year college, they could get CBS if their high school GPA was below a 2.0. If they're a direct admit, so they're a student that actually goes directly to your 4-year school out of high school, and they didn't achieve a 2.0 GPA, unfortunately, they would not be eligible for CBS. So, yeah. So that's the kind of important distinction. We do get a question about the 2-year transfer designation sometimes as well. And so this is a good reminder to say, if a student, didn't achieve a 2.0, they're probably going to have that as a status, and for okay to pay, okay to award. And yeah, okay, yeah, you're welcome. And then we do see that someone listed that they needed to have the email for WASO corrections. We'll make sure to get that out to you from our team. So thanks, Leslie, for capturing that. Is there anyone else that has any questions? Well, we still have a little bit of time. Would love to answer anything that anyone has at this time. Give everyone just a couple minutes. All right. Well, I just want to thank you all for being here today. Again, thank you so much for all of your hard work. Know that our team is here to support you through this process. I hope going over these new things, new features are going to be helpful for you as you go through the interim report. As a reminder, it opens October 13th. We'll send out an email to let everyone know that it is in fact open, and some other just helpful reminders and tools. If for some reason you're not on our distribution list, please do write into the WCG email. We can make sure to add you so that you have any important updates or guidance. And again, just thank you so much for your time, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.